Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball Week 2 reactions. As per usual, my name is Aaron, and I am joined by Mr. John Harris. John, how was your weekend/NFL weekend?
It was a pretty good one. Pretty chill weekend. Good week of football. I gotta say, and I don't know if you feel this way, I'm kind of shocked that the NFL has picked so many good primetime games. Like, even though the teams may not be the most exciting, like Washington, New York, what a game! Like it went down to the wire. Last week, obviously, the Raiders in Baltimore. Like a lot of these primetime games have been just really good so far.
Yeah, and I think having fans back has been it helps that too. But yeah, we're just gonna dive right into it. Like John mentioned already, Thursday nighter, Washington, New York Giants. Washington beats them 30-29. And if you didn't watch, I mean, New York could have won this game. I think it was Darius Slayton had a wide open touchdown, deep pass that just, if he lays out or just hit his fingertips. And then obviously Washington misses the field goal initially at the end, but Dexter Lawrence is called offsides. And I believe the league office said like a day later, right? They said that he shouldn't have been called offsides, I think. I think I saw that.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
hurts even more because obviously Washington nailed the next field goal, so they ended up winning 30-29. But John, what were your thoughts in regards to, like you mentioned, a very exciting game?
This game was a surprising one for a lot of reasons. First off, both teams put up a lot of points. Did not expect that at all. Felt like this was going to be a defensive battle, especially based on last year's matchups. But they both put up a lot of points. Scary Terry, I know everyone believes how talented he is, but he dominated James Bradbury for most of the game, and that was pretty surprising because Bradbury's one of the best corners in the whole league, and so seeing him sort of get lit up by Scary Terry and Taylor Heineke, I think that was pretty surprising. I know that you, I believe, have Antonio Gibson in some of your fantasy leagues.
Yeah,
So, seeing Antonio Gibson's sort of lack of usage was surprising. Overall, I mean, it was just a surprising game. Overall, I felt like both teams played really well. Specifically, both offenses, I think, did pretty solid. The Giants, though, I felt like they had the game for the taking, and they lost it for themselves. Like you said, Slayton should have caught that pass at the same time, and I feel like everyone's sort of blaming only Slayton for it. Daniel Jones could put a little less on it. I mean, you don't want to fully blame anybody, but at the same time, like it didn't work out. Slayton should have caught it because he's an NFL wide receiver, but also if you're an NFL quarterback, you don't want to force your NFL receiver who's literally wide open to have to lay out for a pass like that. That should be money in the bank. The Dexter Lawrence thing, like that, even if he wasn't offsides, like he jumped a little bit, and in such a crucial moment in the game on the inside of the line, you're not a guy who's trying to really block it unless you can get a good push and throw the hand up. I don't understand why he was so antsy, and even put the refs in a position where they felt like there was something that happened, because in the moment, it seemed like he probably was offsides just based on the clip of him zoomed in and he jumps. But I guess he didn't fully go off. I don't know. So anyway, I mean, yeah, it felt like both teams played well. Both teams put up a lot of points. But overall, it seemed like Washington. It seemed like Washington got away with one there, and I mean, a win's a win. But New York, like that I don't think that bodes well for their season, because this was a game that was winnable for them, and they weren't able to get it done. And I think this was catching a Washington team maybe at their lowest. Ryan Fitzpatrick goes down. Heineke's first start of the year. Antonio Gibson doesn't do a whole lot. Curtis Samuel's not even healthy. William Jackson didn't have a good game. Like, there was just so much, I think, going in the Giants' favor, and they still weren't really able to capitalize. That, yeah, I was a little bit disappointed in the Giants, but good win for Washington.
Yeah, it's like you mentioned too, and then like short week. I think that also factored into why it was a little bit more of an offensive game. It seemed like, especially Washington, their front four really gassed out in the second half, which is Giants really made the run on offense, especially. But yeah, I mean, I don't have much else to add to that other than it's just unfortunate. Hopefully, with the extra rest, they can bounce back. I believe the Giants, I think they play the Falcons.
Yeah, they play the Falcons.
Yeah, which I do feel bad for the Falcons too, because it's their second straight opponent that is coming off a Thursday game, so they're gonna have extra rest. And we already saw what happened there, which we'll talk about that game later. But it's a little unfortunate for them. But yeah, good win for Washington. They needed it, especially since like John mentioned, Fitzpatrick is going to be out for some time. So you need to get as many wins as you can, so that you hopefully don't have to be playing catch up with the division or for the playoffs in general. So that is a Thursday night game. Going over to the next one, a little bit of a shocker as well. The Chicago Bears pull off the win against the Cincinnati Bengals, 20-17. This was really just, I think this happened a lot with the early games. I think I don't forget if I was talking to you on Sunday, just some ugly games, like score wise, like very defensive. Like this one, Joe Burrow, I forget he threw 4 picks, or I know Zach Wilson threw 3. I'm mixing them up. Just not a great, especially after week 1. We saw Joe Burrow play really well, and I think we all felt, you and I especially, felt that this Bears secondary was one to be taken advantage of. Once again, I didn't watch this game closely, but just from when I rewatched it, yeah, it just seemed like I think Joe was, and I'll talk about Zach later, but kind of forcing things a little bit too much. So, sometimes you just gotta play an ugly game and accept that. But yeah, Joe Burrow, I felt was trying to force things too much. But obviously, the bigger news too in this game was Justin Fields got in because Andy Dalton got hurt, and looked a little shaky, Justin. But to be fair, first game didn't even have snaps. Probably didn't have much, if any, first team snaps. Practice, and probably was running the Andy Dalton offense and not offense built for Justin Fields. So I think that's important to remember. And obviously, in case you haven't heard, Adam Gase has already said if Andy's healthy, he's our quarterback. So we'll see the status of that. But what were your thoughts in regards to this one, John?
The first thing that really stood out to me is I felt like both offensive lines played really poorly. Yeah. I mean, throwing 3 interceptions for a quarterback is never acceptable, but he also got sacked 4 times. There was, I think, 6 or 7 tackles for loss on the Bears defense. So, I mean, the offensive line for the Bengals was not doing their team justice. Even Joe Mixon, I mean, he had 20 carries, but he was only getting 3.5 per carry compared to, the previous week he had over 100 rushing yards. So, it's the issue that we've known about the Bengals for a while. The first week, it seemed like it didn't really come into effect, but against the Bears defense, who still has a really good front seven, it did. And it put Joe Burrow under a lot of pressure. It did feel like he was forcing things because he wanted the big plays to happen to try and get his team back in the game, because Chicago did hold the lead for a lot of the game. And at the end there, they almost got it together, almost came out with the win, but it was just too little too late. They weren't able to do it. But I mean, once again, no one really expected the Bengals to be amazing this year. So going 2-0 probably would have been a surprise, especially when you play a Chicago team who, has every incentive to try to bounce back after the beating they took in week 1. So, tough game for the Bengals. For the Bears, I feel like a lot of people are panicking about the Bears right now. Calm down. Like, Justin Fields will be okay. Like you said, probably running an Andy Dalton style offense. They weren't prepared for Fields to be in this one. When you get in mid game, you don't have like the scripted 10 plays that you start a game with that can get you, in a rhythm. He's facing a Bengals defense who's, not terrible. They do have Trey Hendrickson, who had, double-digit sacks last year, so he was getting some pressure. And the Bears' offensive line isn't very good, just like the Bengals isn't. The Bears quarterbacks had 3 sacks on them, and I think 2 of those were on Fields, and that's surprising because Fields obviously is very mobile, and we saw times where he did escape the pocket. But they were, still able to get him in the backfield. So, yeah, I mean, it was a scrappy game, I think, for both teams. But at the end of the day, I think the defense really came through for Chicago with that pick 6, and that's really what determined who won.
Yeah, that was. I think that was like right out of the gates. I think also Burrow threw like his 3 picks. I think it was on literally 3 straight passes, I believe, technically, or something like that. So, just really unfortunate that happened. But a good win for the Bears, and obviously with the Bengals, they gotta work on things and move on. But going on to the next game, once again another shocker as it was unfolding was the Cleveland Browns barely edging out the Houston Texans, 31-21. Baker also got injured at one point. I guess it was a shoulder dislocated, popped it back in, and the Browns were able to hold on to the win here. Also, Tyrod Taylor got hurt this game for the Houston Texans, so that was kind of unfortunate because I'm not sure exactly when he got hurt, but I'm sure it would have him being present and playing the full game might be a whole different game. But yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts in regards to this Houston for the second straight week? Obviously, last week they won, but this week keeping it close with the Browns. So, what were your thoughts in regards to that?
I was pretty surprised. I can't. I think I picked Houston to be the worst team in the league, and I mean, they obviously they balled out week one, but I mean, they almost like I don't want to say they were gonna beat Cleveland, but there was a point around halfway through that game where it really looked like they could have. If things went right for them in the second half. Obviously, they didn't. Tyrod got hurt. I'm not sure when he did either. But I mean, he was 10 for 11 before he got hurt, 125 yards and a touchdown. So he was cooking. He was having success against the Browns. And it's just a shame that he got hurt again because he's already been placed on IR. So he's missing at least 3 weeks. And their, rookie quarterback Davis Mills is coming in. And so, you don't want to root against Mills, but it would just suck to see Tyrod after the success that he was having early with the Texans. If the same thing happened, in his previous runs with some of these teams and young rookie quarterbacks coming in to replace him. For the Browns, though, I mean, offensively, it was the most Browns game ever, right? Baker Mayfield threw 21 passes, completed 19 of them. One of those incompletions did go for an interception, but he bounced back after it. Nick Chubb, 95 yards. Kareem Hunt was heavily involved, 156 on the ground. Like it was just, the Browns don't surprise you. They're going to do what they do. But I am a little bit worried for their defense. I thought their defense probably performed better. And with Kansas City, you kind of give them, an excuse because it's the Chiefs, but the Texans managed to put up 21 points on them. And that was in the midst of their quarterback going down and, just not being a very talented team. So, yeah, I think the Browns defense is something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I've concerns about them too, especially we mentioned how much talent they have. So it's just, I don't know if it's, putting all the pieces together right now or they do really see out scheme. So once again, I have to watch this game a little more closely. But I mean, if I'm judging off their week one performance, they just need to get more. If I'm assuming a kind of similar performance, they need to get more creative on defensive end. Change up some zones, maybe flood certain areas where the opposing team's gonna like to throw or likes to do. Just some sort of changing it up because they have, like we mentioned, they have the talent. It's just, you gotta be better than that. Like John mentioned, especially with a rookie also coming in, especially not a highly touted rookie. I think he was like 4th, 5th round type guy, and a guy that I don't think any of us are really expecting to be great in the NFL. So, which, no offense, sorry, Davis, if you're listening, but that's just my opinion. But also important to note too, Jarvis Landry got hurt this game too for Cleveland. I believe they've already placed him on IR as of today, so he'll be out for at least 3 weeks. And I know I have Odell in a couple of leagues. Questionable for Sunday, but I mean he still hasn't even practiced with contact coming off an ACL injury. So this is just me speculation. I'm not reading into any tea leaves. It's just my pure speculation. I don't imagine he'll be playing next week. So that'll be interesting in regards to who Cleveland plays next week. But so that is the Browns beating out the Texans by 10, which we both picked. Unfortunately, the Browns to cover, so they didn't do that there. Going on to the next game too. What's another quarterback injury? The LA Rams beat the Indianapolis Colts 27-24. And this one, though, it was Carson Wentz that got hurt. I believe he sprained both of his ankles, according to Frank Reich today. And so, while it was a close game like the week before, I mean, at the end of the day, Colts 0-2, Rams 2-0. So, John, what were your thoughts and takeaways in regards to this game?
I feel bad for Carson Wentz. I mean, I really do. It sucks because anytime this sort of stuff happens, the media narrative just becomes so much about how he can't stay healthy and blah blah blah. And like, sure, it is true, but like I feel bad for the guy. I really do because he's going out there. He's putting his body on the line. I don't know if you watched this game at all, but there was plays where he was just getting destroyed by the defensive line, but he was doing everything he could to keep the play alive. He was getting the ball out. He wasn't, taking sacks. He was throwing it. He was getting rid of it. He was doing what he had to while in the midst of being hit. And so it sucks that he did get hurt because I felt like the Colts actually had the momentum to go and win this game with him in there. I mean, him and Michael Pittman were killing it. So yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate for the Colts. I felt like they came out with a really good game plan. They could have won this game. Jack Doyle had a really good performance as well. But the Rams, at the end of the day, Cooper Kupp, he's just having a monster start to the season right now, and they did enough to hold on to the win. So it's a good one for the Rams, but I think it even makes me think back to when we made our picks. I think you might be right that maybe I wasn't giving Indianapolis with a healthy Carson Wentz enough credit that they could be a pretty serious team this year, assuming once again that he is able to play.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think I mentioned last year. Just Wentz, just too reckless to, playing like it's the last play, and I think on the play he got injured. He was trying to like wrestle his feet away from Aaron Donald, which I mean, even you got to know when the play's done, live for the next play, and hopefully he learns from that. But regardless, we kind of foresaw that this could be not Wentz getting injured, but Colts have a tough start to the season. So we'll see how his health status is going to the next game. But I really don't have much else to add other than, keep an eye on his status. And I think it's important to factor into, I think this may work out long term for the Colts and for maybe Wentz if this year doesn't go well. Because I think they'll only have to give up a second if he doesn't play. I think it was 75% of the snaps, or they make the playoffs. So at the rate they're going, especially if Wentz does miss time, I mean, obviously they're going for the win now, but hey, maybe they'll still have the first round pick next year. Get back at it next year because, like we mentioned, just right from the get go, had injuries, had COVID issues, and training camp is just this team was just not luck was not on their side. So
Right.
that is the Rams, though. They are 2-0, and like I said, Colts winless at this point. But going on to another fun game, or what I thought was going to be a fun matchup. And another quarterback injury, though. The Buffalo Bills took care of business and went to Miami and beat them 35-0. Tua did get hurt this game. That's the quarterback injury. I believe it was a rib injury, so he's status up in the air for this upcoming week. But it was just a dominant game by Buffalo, especially their defense, which I think we both had question marks coming into the season about. And shout out Gregory Rousseau, a guy that I forget how you felt about him, but I wasn't that high on. I don't think a lot of people weren't high on, and he's just already balling out. I think he had 2 sacks, maybe 3. I know he had 2 at least sacks this game. Not just sack wise, though. He was just watching the game. He was just purely disruptive. So that was good for Buffalo. And on offensive side, still not perfect. I think because, and once again, they came out with tough opponents. So I think everyone that's freaking out about Josh Allen, like, calm down. They played Pittsburgh week 1. And then the Dolphins team that, once again, Brian Daboll came from New England. Brian Flores from New England. I feel, Brian Flores is going to know some of the tendencies of Brian Daboll's offense. They played twice last year. And like we mentioned a million times, they have the corners to, with some of the toughest corners to go up against. So the fact that the Bills still had success was good. But yeah, in regards to the Dolphins, I'll ask this question after I see how you feel. But like I said, dominant performance by the Bills. Got some question marks for the Dolphins, but John, how do you feel about this game and these two teams going forward?
I'm starting to have some pretty major concerns about the Miami offense. I know that Tua got hurt, and I think if he's going to miss extended time, I don't have a ton of faith in Jacoby Brissett, being able to elevate this team to a playoff team, which is, I think, really their main goal after last year. And I think their offense, we need more. I mean, obviously that's, they had 0 points, so I'm not trying to, make light of that, but like just on the year as a whole, like they didn't put up a lot of points in week 1. They weren't able to do a lot here in week 2. And these are your divisional opponents. These are the teams that you're directly competing with. And these are two games that, you could look back on later in the year if they are in playoff contention that could really come back to bite them as tiebreakers. If, anything like that were to, occur. So I mean, I think it just goes without saying we need more out of this Miami offense. I don't know if it's because the offensive line's not amazing. I don't know if it's, they aren't really getting a consistent run game. I'm not sure exactly what the issue is. I haven't been able to really watch in detail either of the Dolphins games. But I mean, their defense is still performing at least decently well. Last week, obviously, New England, they were able to hold them to 16 points. And this week, I mean, Buffalo put up 35, but like, what do you want to do when your offense literally can't score? It's going to be tough to hold the opposing team when they're holding you to a shutout. So, pretty surprising game, honestly, because I did pick Miami to cover. I figured they'd keep this one close just because I expected the Dolphins to, hold Buffalo to at least, I think 20 something points, and then they'd be able to put up in the 20s, and they just got embarrassed.
Yeah, and the question I wanted to pose to you is that's just not really a question, but how do you feel about like? And I think this was one of my concerns was Tua's durability coming in, and I don't want to pile on him because he's already had a rough start and obviously another injury, but if the season, if let's say Miami misses out on the season, Tua plays average, kind of like he has been. If you're Miami's GM, do you, especially with they're gonna have their first round pick and San Francisco's, like if you have the opportunity to move up, grab a quarterback, do you think that would you do it? Take that shot, or do you
I
maybe
mean,
address a line like some people are saying, and then give Tua another year?
I just think that with the way the NFL draft works these days, you have those assets. I respect Arizona for what they did so much because I think a lot of people in that situation were saying, no, give Josh Rosen an offensive line, give him maybe some better coaching, give him whatever. And I'm not saying that Tua is Josh Rosen because Josh Rosen is clearly, was not worth a first round pick, has not been able to even really find a consistent backup role yet. So I'm not saying that, but at the same time, I haven't necessarily seen anything from Tua so far that has really sold me on him being a franchise quarterback. And it sucks that he got hurt, and I really hope that he can play and he'll be fine. And this is not a lingering injury because I think this is an important year for him. But overall, I mean, it's the NFL. You have to take into account injury proneness for every player. Like that's just the price of doing business. And I think at the most important position, being quarterback, if you got a guy who can't stay healthy, I mean, we saw what the Eagles did, right? Like they won the Super Bowl a few years ago, and they cleaned house. That started with their coach and Carson Wentz, who were two incredibly key important pieces at that time to what people expected the Eagles to be for the next decade. And a few years removed from that, and they're both gone. So I think that if the Dolphins have an opportunity and there's a quarterback that's the clear cut, which I'm not sure based on the quarterbacks I know of this next draft class, I'm not necessarily sold on any of them yet. But if they have those sort of opportunities to do what the Cardinals did and go and get your guy like Kyler Murray, I think you have to do it if you have the assets to do it. And right now they do. And those assets aren't going to last forever because, as drafts pass, you got to use those picks.
Yeah, obviously, you know where I am. It was one of my concerns coming out of the draft. Just know there was nothing elite that I felt about Tua physically, and that's a part of playing really any position in the NFL, especially quarterback. I mean, once again, we saw just to compare him to his draft mates. I mean, we see Justin Herbert. We'll talk about him later. He's got a rocket arm, and he's tall and big enough to take the hits and just, I mean, take a sack or be hit while he's throwing but still deliver on the money. That's why he's one of the better guys under pressure in his rookie year. And then Joe Burrow, we see once again though didn't have a great game this week, but we saw it last year, shifty in the pocket and can just make just about any throw. And I think he has a good enough arm where he can do some elite things with his arm as well. But also just his intangibles are him reading. He's very great at reading defenses, making reads. So. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Miami. But yeah, I'm with you. Obviously, Brissett isn't the guy. I doubt they'll bring Cam in because I know that's the first thought right now if any quarterback goes down because they're very similar to New England. So, but yeah, not a great one for Miami. Hopefully they can bounce back from this. And shout out to our friend Kyle Wells who played against the Bills defense in our dynasty league, and they dropped 30 points on him because I put if you get I mean it rarely happens that an NFL team gets skunked. I didn't put like a crazy amount. I felt it was like 14 points. If you hold the team to 0 points, you should get a little bit extra. So,
yeah, that's really hard to do.
yeah, and it sucks because Miami was close. I think the one time they were in the red zone, they fumbled. Like, happened a few times. So it's just real unfortunate. But anyways, keeping in that division, going on to the next game, New England Patriots took care of business against my guy, Zach Wilson, 25-6. Bigger story. Zach Wilson threw 4 interceptions. Yes, once again, a big Zach Wilson fan. I will just say, I'm not going to, they were bad. Most of them were bad. I'm not going to, and I think it's similar to what I said with Wentz. He just needs to stop trying to be the hero, and especially realize, you're on a Jets team that's pretty bad. Like, and Robert Saleh did say afterwards, you mentioned, hey, sometimes it's okay to play boring football. I think that's another thing too, is just adjusting to the NFL. It's not college where every game's going to be, 24-31, high scoring. You're going to rip off big plays. Sometimes you're going to be in these ugly, like I said, 25-6 here. That's still kind of an ugliest score. And it probably would have been uglier if he didn't throw the 4 interceptions. Like, they would have probably been in the game. So, yeah, I think Zach Wilson just needs to learn to not let the game get to him and just be patient. You're not with a great team. You're not going to get many wins, so you just got to be patient. It showed a little bit last week, but obviously he was under siege, and this week, he offensive line wasn't great either, but just the decisions weren't great on his part, just forcing too many things. So that's something he needs to clean up. But regards to the Patriots, not much to say on them on my end. Right now it's just that Mac Jones, being not, I don't call him a game manager, but managing the game, not trying not to make mistakes, letting his defense win, making a throw here and there, running the ball. So, yeah, good for the Patriots, and for the Jets, it's kind of status quo. I felt, I wasn't surprised. But, John, how'd you feel about this game and how it went?
Do not panic. Anyone who is freaking out about Zach Wilson, I just want to read to you something because, you just got to know at this point, all right? Bill Belichick obviously is absurd against young quarterbacks. I believe his record against rookie QBs is 25-6 or something like that. It's pretty crazy. I'm taking that off the top of my head. I think I'm wrong there. I'm 75% sure I'm a little off there. I think it might have been 25-10. I don't know. Regardless, his record against rookie quarterbacks, he has a lot of success. And one of the most notable examples last year was Justin Fields. I even told you this after the game. They beat the Chargers 45-0. I think it was week 4 or something like that. One of the first few games that Herbert was in, and he got destroyed. They got shut out 45-0. In that game, Herbert had 2 interceptions, only 200 yards. He completed less than 50% of his passes. His quarterback rating was just awful. He was terrible. And if you do what you're doing, if you do what a lot of people do when Bill Belichick faces these young guys, you'd freak out and say that Herbert was a bust. Obviously, he was not. A lot of people view him as potentially even a top 10 quarterback right now. So do not panic on Zach Wilson. He's on a worse team than Herbert was last year. So he's probably trying to do more than Herbert had to. Herbert did have a crappy offensive line just like Zach did. But at least he had Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, I believe, was still healthy in that game. Hunter Henry was having a good year. So he had firepower. Zach doesn't have all of those things. So don't freak out about Zach Wilson. I even expected, I called this before the game, Bill Belichick's absurd against young quarterbacks.
Yeah, so you're right. At least before the game, 21-6. Obviously now 22-6 is Bill Belichick's record against rookies. Once again, I expected this too. I didn't play him in my 2-quarterback dynasty league or 2-quarterback league. I think I started Mac Jones, Sam Darnold, and it hurt, but I played New England's defense, got rewarded. I'm not taking much stock into this loss for Zach Wilson, as John is. So that is that game. But once again, keeping in the theme of kind of ugly games, the San Francisco 49ers hung on and beat the Philadelphia Eagles 17-11. Yeah, I mean, it was really defensive game. Tough for both sides to really get anything going. It wasn't until late. San Francisco scored 10 points in the fourth quarter, and the Eagles scored 8, which was a touchdown, 2-point conversion. But yeah, I mean, it was. I want to get your thoughts first. What were your thoughts in regards to this? I want to call it more of a defensive slugfest.
The most important thing I think to me that stood out was the battle in the trenches. I felt like the Eagles played really well on the defensive line. The only issue with that is that Brandon Graham, I believe, got hurt and is now out for the season.
Towards
That is a
Achilles.
really tough loss for them, really key contributor. So it's going to remain to be seen if they can continue to do that moving forward, because it seemed like even with the old guys that they got on that line, that was their strength. Jalen Hurts didn't have an amazing game through the air, which I was a little surprised about because I expected them to pick apart the 49ers secondary. That Richard Sherman's gone, Jason Verrett is hurt. They're pretty thin right now. And he only had 190 yards. He didn't throw a touchdown, also didn't throw an interception though. So there wasn't a whole lot going in the air for him. But even then, I felt like the passing yards were a little inflated because he had one pass to Quez Watkins that went for 91. I don't know how many of those are in the air, but even if we, put half of that as, him throwing it, then after the catch, I mean, so he's potentially even looking at just like 100 something yards, like a little over 100 pretty much, if we take out all the after the catch stuff. So didn't have a lot of success in the air, which I was surprised about, but he did have success on the ground, 82 rushing yards on 10 carries, ran for a touchdown. But overall for the Eagles, they couldn't get into a rhythm the entire game. San Francisco's defense was really able to have success against them, force stops over and over and over, even though they weren't able to force turnovers. But on the other side, San Francisco wasn't able to get their run game going. One has to think maybe Trey Sermon becomes more involved. Only 1 carry this week, while Elijah Mitchell, 17 carries, but only 42 yards, 2.5 yards per carry. Couldn't get anything really. So I don't know. It was a defensive battle. I think, the Niners, they handled their business there. But overall, I don't know. I don't know what to take away from this game, honestly, for either team, because it was just such a weird game.
Yeah, only thing I really want to touch on was a concern that I had going into the season about the Eagles, and I think some Eagles fans kind of went at us in the comment section about I was worried about their passing game. Yeah, a little bit about Jalen Hurts' ability to push the ball downfield if necessary, and just their creativeness in general. And I think that showed a little bit this game because, like John mentioned, I mean this is a San Francisco secondary that's not very talented. I mean, they still have, Fred Warner in the middle, and they have solid safeties, but still the corners should be able to attack them, but they couldn't. And so, yeah. But, yeah, like John mentioned, it is important to remember Philly got a really good D-line, so and also important to remember, too, by the way,
Just cut out. I'll fix it.
But also important to remember, I think Elijah Mitchell got hurt this game. Trey Sermon got hurt really early right afterwards, so the running backs that Kyle Shanahan is used to, or at least, Kyle Shanahan was already put in a bind. The 49ers really didn't have their top running backs to run that system, which for Kyle, one of the main reasons why it works is because he just basically, it's a complicated run system, but he tries to make it easy as long as he can, but still. So the run game wasn't really going for them. They had trouble getting that going, and we'll see how that goes next week. And then thus led to their passing game having struggles because Debo is really the only reliable receiver, and I'm not sure if it's a game plan thing, but Kittle didn't really have a great game either. So we'll see what happens going forward. But hey, good gritty win for the 49ers, and like I said, this is what I mean. Like Jimmy G, not a pretty game. 22 completions, 189 yards. That's definitely less than 10. That's probably 9-ish yards per completion. So, not the prettiest game, but he managed the game well, and they won the game. So that is that for that game. It's a good win for San Francisco. Going on to another game, a little bit of a surprise. But the Las Vegas Raiders go to Pittsburgh and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 26-17. Derek Carr looked great. Henry Ruggs had a big catch at the end of the game. But yeah, I guess I don't know what storyline you really want to lead with, yeah, what were your thoughts in regards to this one? Because there's like two storylines. There's the Raiders, and then there's the Steelers. So I'm not sure where you want to go.
I want to talk about the Raiders. I'll leave the Steelers for you. I'm incredibly impressed by them. They came into this year. They had two tough games, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, and they handled them both. Obviously, Baltimore, everyone saw that wild Monday night game, and they were able to win that one. Well, they came into Pittsburgh, I believe. I'm pretty sure it was in Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
and they honestly they were just the better team from the get go. They went with two field goals early. Pittsburgh seems like they got some life. Juju gets the touchdown, but then another field goal and then another touchdown from Derek Carr. And they looked good. They really did. I think their defensive line has been a key factor in these two wins right now. Obviously, Pittsburgh doesn't have an amazing offensive line, but Baltimore is pretty solid, and the Raiders have been better than both of those lines. I mean, they've dominated the line of scrimmage. They've pressured these quarterbacks. They've not made things comfortable for them, and they've stuffed for the most part the run game. I mean, I know with the Ravens you got Lamar, but they didn't really allow much to go in the run game against Baltimore when they played them, and they did the same thing here. Najee Harris wasn't able to get a lot going on the ground. He did have some success in the passing game, but overall just wasn't able to do a whole lot. So I'm impressed with the Raiders. I'm not fully ready to flip and say that this team's going to be a playoff team because you gotta maintain this. But I think they have impressed a lot of people so far that have been very low on them, and I think they're showing that unlike some of these previous Raiders teams, they might deserve a little bit more respect because guys like Max Crosby, I mean, he's making difference, and that's a big thing that we've talked about the last year is they didn't necessarily have difference makers on defense, and I think now they do.
Yeah, I just want to touch on them before I get to the Pittsburgh because I also want to heap a little bit of praise because also I think Derek Carr, we're finally seeing him. He looks finally comfortable
Yes.
in the John Gruden system. And on top of that,
Yes.
and Ruggs had a good game. That's what you want to see out of Henry Ruggs. That's what we've been waiting. So hopefully you can build on that. But also, even guys like Brian Edwards had some contributions, and Hunter Renfro's been solid. So good to see that for the Raiders. But yeah, I'm going to Pittsburgh. Man, it's like we alluded to last week. Just it seems like they haven't really grown their pass game from last year. Just it's still kind of the short, to the sticks passes. Once again, maybe they're still trying to find a way to get the run game going and then build off that. But as of right now, I do have concerns about Pittsburgh's offense because their defense is doing what they can. I mean, Derek Carr still had to throw 37 times, got sacked twice, but going forward too, especially because T.J. Watt's dealing with a groin injury, so who knows, he might not even be 100%, or he might be out next game. And then also no Deontay. I think Deontay Johnson's might miss time as well. So Chase Claypool lovers, hype. We always hate seeing injury, but still, like, even as someone that's pro Chase Claypool, I'm still concerned that just about Pittsburgh's pass offense in general. And then depending on the health of T.J. Watt, their defense may take a step back because he is one. I think he is the highest paid or one of the highest paid defensive guys already right now. You lose him already, it's tough because Devin Bush still working his way back from an ACL injury, and I think I forget Stephon. I think they lost Stephon to it, right? Or he's out for.
I'm not sure.
I don't think he played this game either. I think he's still getting back to health. So, but regardless, not a deep Pittsburgh front four, which they've been relying on to help out the defense. So, yeah. Unfortunately for my two Pittsburgh fans, if you're listening out there, Onik and Garrett Edwards, yeah, not much faith going forward, but we'll see. I mean, Pittsburgh's always one of those teams that no matter how ugly they look, they always somehow figure it out, and they always somehow get in the playoffs with Mike Tomlin. So we'll see what happens there with them. But going for the Raiders, 2-0. Steelers, hey, still 1-1, got a chance. But speaking of 2-0 and 1-1, the Carolina Panthers put the beat down on the Saints. Kind of almost gave them the treatment that they gave Green Bay, 26-7. I mean, Panthers D look great. Sam Darnold is showing what, hey, like just what he can do with actual weapons and talent around him. But I just want to throw it to you first. How did you feel about this game and your boy Matt Rule getting the big win over the Saints?
I always knew that Matt Rule was going to do this eventually. I didn't expect him to do it so soon. They have an incredible young defense. J.C. Horn, Jeremy Chin, Derek Brown, Brian Burns, a lot of these young guys. These are who's headlining their defense, and they're looking really good right now. Like I said, I knew Matt Rule would do it. Typically, it took a few years for him to really get into his stride, and maybe that's still the case. It's only week 2. We don't want to, jump too much on, what's happening so far. But I think the flashes are there of what is to come. That this could be one of the best defenses for a couple years once they fully, grow into the NFL and all this kind of stuff. So. And that's what I expected. I mean, Phil Snow has been the defensive coordinator with Matt Rule since they were at Temple, maybe even before that. So they have a lot of familiarity with each other. Their staple has been their defense at every single team they've been at. And I think the big difference maker for the Panthers and Matt Rule right now is that unlike his previous tenures at the different colleges that he coached, he has a legit offensive coordinator in Joe Brady who can make magic happen. I mean, the things that he's doing, that the Adam Gase effect is real, right? Like Sam Darnold just wasn't able to do anything in New York. He's looking great outside of the system, just like Tannehill did. So, yeah, I mean, the Panthers, they look really good right now. But I think to me, the bigger story was the flip-flop the Saints pulled. They dominated in week 1 and they got dominated in week 2. Jameis, he had 5 touchdowns, 0 turnovers last week. Similar yardage output this week, but two interceptions, no touchdowns. I'm getting a little concerned about this passing attack that in 2 games combined, Jameis has about 260 yards. Most quarterbacks beat that in a half, of week 1. Like, well, not most, but some, right? Like Dak Prescott and Derek Carr, like they threw for 400 in week 1, and Jameis has 260 through 2 games. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what's happening. The run game got absolutely destroyed. Alvin Kamara had 8 carries for 5 yards. Tony Jones, 3 carries for 7 yards. Like, they got dominated in this game, and I don't know how to feel about the Saints all of a sudden. I think a lot of people really were thinking they might be the real deal with Jameis and this deep ball, but they regressed heavily in week 2. So. Yeah, we'll have to see how the Saints bounce back. I know that people are really praising the deep ball for Jameis and all this kind of stuff. We haven't really seen it a lot, if we're being real. Like, we've seen maybe a few throws deep, but I'm looking for Sean Payton essentially to start dialing up some more because, like I said, 260 passing yards through 2 games. That's not good enough in the NFL.
And in regards to that, I think it's a little bit of, first of all, playing the strength of his team, good offensive line. You have Alvin Kamara. I think a little bit of it, too, is, and I'm just, going off my speculation. I think it helps a little bit kind of manage Jameis if they're a run-first team. And the fact
but even in that game, like I said,
and
they
the run game never
got
going. So I just think that when they did do play action, they really probably couldn't do the play action plays they wanted to, knowing that Carolina, unlike Green Bay, didn't have to sell out to stop the run. They have the talent on the front 7 just to do so, and also the corners. And I think also the fact that no real difference-making wide receiver or even tight end right now. I know they had great weeks last week, but we kind of saw it this week, like you mentioned. It's I forget his name, Lil Jordan Humphrey, the leading receiver with 1 catch and 27 yards. And then next was Alvin Kamara with 4 and 25. And then after that, it's like a bunch of guys with 1-1-1. Marcus Callaway had 2 for 8. So, and then, I think more of the credit should go to Carolina because I think we mentioned before, some teams, especially when you play a division, you got to just build your team to beat the division, some of your guys. And right now, like I just mentioned, Saints got one of the better offensive lines in the league. And the fact that Carolina came in, held their own, and didn't let them get the run game off at all was huge for them. And then on the flip side too, Sam Darnold was efficient, managed the game well. And granted to New Orleans, no Marshawn Lattimore. I don't think he would have made the difference if they won the game. But I do think that DJ Moore doesn't have as good of a game as he has if Marshawn Lattimore was there. But yeah, I'm interested. I am concerned in regards to the Saints wide receiver talent. That's why I don't think I had them in the playoffs, right?
I don't think
I know.
either of us did.
Yeah, I had Carolina going in, so
You did,
um,
yeah.
we'll see
I
how this
didn't.
goes for further. Like we said last week, everyone was freaking out. Jameis had 5 touchdowns. He's back, LASIK surgery. Now he has 2 interceptions. Like let's temper expectations. We're not saying he sucks now, but we've seen it happens with a lot of these teams. We've seen really good one week and really bad another week. Let's give him a few more weeks. This year's 17-week season, so got a lot more football to play. But yeah, that was a good division matchup and good win for Matt Rule and the Panthers. But going on to the next one here, the Denver Broncos also extended their record to 2-0, beat the Jaguars 23-13. Only thing I'd say about this game, just before I throw it to John, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater kind of proving me wrong, being a little more aggressive, throwing the ball downfield with some pace too. So he's looking good. And then Jaguars, like we mentioned, it's the Jaguars. Like y'all are college coach, first time in the NFL, a quarterback that came from Clemson, which is typically a really collegey kind of offense. So I think it's important to factor in that both those guys are kind of growing and learning at the same time, which can be difficult. So yeah, unfortunately for the Jaguars, this is going to be status quo. But John, you have any takeaways in regards to this game and how it went?
Not a whole lot. It was good to see Cortland Sutton back. I'm a big believer in him this
Yes, yeah,
year.
I forgot.
Jerry Judy obviously got hurt, and that sucks. But Sutton turned up in a big way. 9 catches, 159 yards, had 12 targets. Clearly, him and Teddy, they had some chemistry there. And like you said, there was a long one in there. He had a 55-yard play. I don't think a lot of that was after the catch. I think it was like 40 something in the air. So Teddy, he was throwing it deep, which is not the normal for him. And so, yeah, I think it was just a good, clean game from the Broncos. And I think really this is just the status quo that we can sort of expect from Denver on the year when you have Teddy is, maybe they're not going to win them all, but they're going to be in a lot of games because Teddy's going to keep them there. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's going to make the right play. And they have a pretty solid defense to where they can handle that kind of stuff. It does suck that I think Bradley Chubb got hurt and he's going to require surgery to fix it. I don't know the timetable and how long he's going to be out, but I think he's expected to return at some point this year. I'm not sure the status on Von Miller. I can't remember if he played this game or not. Let me look right here. He did play in this game, but I think he was banged up a little bit before it. So yeah, it wasn't really an exciting game. And I think, like you said, it sucks for the Jaguars and everything and just having to adjust. Once again, wasn't a big fan of the Urban Meyer hire, and I think that it's directly playing into potentially the success that this team could have, right now because of like you said, the adjustment period from college to the NFL, and it doesn't help that you're now having to adjust a rookie quarterback, and it's. I don't want to, I'm not going to freak out about Trevor Lawrence, but he's got 5 picks in 2 weeks, and so it's been rough for him so far.
Yeah. So, all right. So now going on to the afternoon games. These were a lot more exciting, a lot more high scoring. If you're in fantasy, it was one of those weeks where after the like midway through for us the noon games, I was like, man, if you have basically it's like whoever had more players in the afternoon was probably going to win, as we can see by the scores. So yeah, starting off with this one, Arizona Cardinals beat the Vikings 34-33. This was a very exciting game, breakout kind of game for Rondale Moore. He had a great game, had a big touchdown as well. Kyler looked good, had some good moments. Obviously, threw 2 picks. One was a pick 6, so that wasn't great. But yeah, I mean, in regards to this one, I mean, Vikings did okay. I mean, they showed some fight, which they always do with Mike Zimmer. I don't think they really get blown out a lot, but unfortunately, I mean, they were almost they're basically handed the game on a silver platter at the end. A little bit of clock mismanagement. Kyler Murray ran for I think it was a first down or close to a first. He ran out of bounds, though. Didn't, stop in bounds, so it saved Minnesota a timeout. And I think they got the stop and then had a punt. And then once again, if you didn't watch, got pretty close. It's like a 30, 40-yard field goal, which is considered pretty makeable nowadays. Just missed it, so.
It was 37.
37. So, yeah.
Which is only 4 yards behind the extra point.
Yeah, and he did miss an extra point earlier too, which if he had once again had missed an extra point, it would have been tied. That would have been purely for the win. So I think that was is a Greg Joseph, I think is his name.
Yeah.
So unfortunate for him, and unfortunate for Vikings fans because like they just have this curse of kickers. With why am I forgetting the other one? There's one
Blair
that
Walsh.
Blair Walsh in the playoffs to send them forward.
Hey, his rookie year, he was
He was
amazing.
amazing.
After
I had him in
that, he
fantasy,
sucked.
but yeah. So Minnesota blows this game or blows a chance to win the game. But John, how would you feel about this game and Kyler Murray's performance?
It was this was a weird game because Arizona had such a defensive dominance last week, and then Minnesota sort of tore them apart on the defensive end. Like Dalvin Cook, 130 rushing yards, 6 a carry. Kirk Cousins, 240 in the air, 3 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and KJ Osborne all got touchdowns here. So, they're really spreading the ball out. So, that part was interesting to watch. I think that Minnesota showed they have the offensive talent to be a playoff team. It's just can everything else come together? But for the Cardinals, like you said, I think they scraped by on this one. They should have lost that game. Greg Joseph, that's a heartbreaker to miss. But it happens, right? Like that's the NFL. You got to have special teams. You got to have all three phases to win a game. And in this game, the Vikings just didn't have it. The Cardinals did. Offensively, the Cardinals, they're starting to look like an offensive juggernaut. Kyler Murray, he makes things happen. Whether it's running the ball, whether it's passing the ball, he makes plays, and they got the receiving talent to do it. Hopkins, he only had 54 yards in this game, but Max Williams, tight end, 7 catches, 94. Rondale Moore, like you said, rookie receiver. I was really high on him coming out of the draft. 7 catches, 114 for a touchdown. So they got a lot of weapons there. It's just can they continue to use them correctly? I'm not shocked that Arizona is 2-0 here. I did expect Tennessee to put more of a fight there, but I was expecting them to beat the Vikings here. But once again, it's just can they be consistent? Because last year they looked really good the first half of the year, and then they lost 6 of their last 9 games. So once again, and I'm going to say this probably about Arizona for a long time until they can prove to me that they are. And I'm going to sound like a broken record, but can they be consistent moving forward? They did good these first 2 weeks. Can they keep doing it?
And I will say in regard, you mentioned Dalvin Cook. He was really having a great game, but then I think he hurt his ankle or something, got taped up, and he just wasn't exactly the same after that. And I think also Minnesota was a little worried about it because they weren't calling as many run plays, even though it was a close game. Kind of went to more of their pass game instead. So that was a little bit unfortunate for them. But yeah, regardless, going for Arizona, 2-0. Let's see if they can keep the momentum. But another team that's 2-0, Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to 2-0, beat down the Falcons. We're not shocked. We're not surprised. 40-25. It was a little bit of a closer game though. It was I'm trying to remember. It was a 10-point game at one point, right?
It was a 3-point game.
3-point game. I'm sorry. 3-point game, and then just kind of fell off for Atlanta. Matt Ryan throws 2 pick sixes late. That first one was just really I think that first one really showed just how Matt Ryan felt. I don't know if you saw. He just got like drilled and just laid there as they were running back to pick 6, the first one. So it's a rough year for Falcons fans. And once again, the Bucs just a purely dominant team. Falcons, like we said, put up a good fight, but Matt Ryan was under siege a lot during that game. I think he was able to. He should get more credit because he really kept them in that game, making some good throws, which you have to do because they were not able to run the ball really at all, which is typical against Tampa. But unfortunately, they just couldn't hold on. Their defense, for lack of a better phrase, stinks. And offense, I think we saw, offensive line's not great, run game's not great, so you're pretty one-dimensional. So not shocked about Tampa being so dominant in this one. But John, how would you feel about this game?
It went as expected. I expected Matt Ryan and the Falcons to bounce back and have a little more success in the passing game than they did the first week. But overall, it's still Tampa. They're still just a juggernaut. Tom Brady, 5 touchdowns. Like he was going crazy. The passing game was going crazy. And it sucks because for Atlanta, if you're a Falcons fan, your team has basically entered that spot where if, you're playing fantasy football and your guys are playing the Falcons, you start them because that's the sort of level that they're at defensively. Offensively, It just feels like with Julio gone, there's just not as many difference makers on this team. Calvin Ridley hasn't really popped a ton yet. He did have 7 catches, 63 yards, and a touchdown. So it was a decent game. Kyle Pitts had a pretty solid one with 73 yards. But outside of that, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't feel like they really have a run game. It feels like Mike Davis and Cordero Patterson, who are really their main two running backs, are better at catching the ball probably than they are at running it. So it's going to be a rough year for the Falcons. They're not looking good right now. And I do feel bad for Matt Ryan because I felt like it was time for them to move on. I feel like for his career's sake, this might be his last year in Atlanta because they're not going to be very good. And I can't imagine he's going to want to play potentially more years after this in a rebuild.
Yeah, I thought for a second, I was like, man, like, and maybe this is an option. Week trade deadline. I think Miami, maybe they go grab him, depending on the health of Tua, especially if Tua is still struggling, maybe. I thought the Colts for a second, but I don't think they even have the cap space. It would have, I think Matt Ryan have to be some sort of buyout probably because I know they're strapped for cash. But yeah, with all these quarterback injuries, like we mentioned in the offseason review, maybe week 8 they sell Matt Ryan, trade him, try to get something for him, what to a team that really needs him. But yeah, we'll see.
I
Go
know
ahead.
that Fitzpatrick and Heineke are good, but all I'm saying is if Matt Ryan's in Washington, they're a really good team.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe Washington makes that call because Fitzy is supposed to be out for what I think it was 8 weeks, so at least a week 9, 10. So maybe that's what they want to do, especially since I'm not sure. Maybe he's the best choice, but he didn't get surgery, so who knows. Um, Going on to the next game, one that John probably knows a lot more about. The Dallas Cowboys beat the LA Chargers 20-17. To my quick recap, I mean, it was looking really good for Justin Herbert. I think at one point he only had one incompletion, which was a pick. And then I forget, it's like third quarter, I want to say. Throws a pick like right to, I think he tried to thread a needle, threw it right to, I'm trying to forget who picked it off the
It
second
was
time.
DeMonte Casey.
Casey, yeah, it was basically right to him. Like he tried to thread the needle. Casey was ready for it. And then
And I
really
think
doubt
Keenan Allen tripped, by the way. I'm
Keenan Allen
not sure
tripped.
on that.
Okay.
It didn't look like, from what I remember, that the whoever the receiver was upright
Okay. Because I
when
was
the
like,
pick
I
happened.
just thought that he was trying to thread a needle, like, because he gets away with it most
It
of the time.
it was tight, but I feel like if the
Okay.
receiver was upright, they wouldn't have been picked, at least like
Yeah.
tipped or something.
Yeah. I'm trusting John that he watched the game probably a little more closely than I did. But yeah, I mean, I think the bigger takeaway is Dallas's defense kind of has been impressive. I mean, definitely. I'm not saying it's a top 10-ish yet, but they're definitely playing well. They're playing high. I think they're playing better than like I said, better than we most of us expected. They're not really losing games, keeping their team in games, and Dallas's offense kind of finds a way now that their offensive line is being shuffled around. But yeah, I'm just gonna throw it right to you, man. What were your thoughts in regards to this one?
First off, it was a heart-wrenching game to watch. It was nerve-wracking because Dallas and their defense, they did hold them to 17 points, but I think that 17 can be a little deceiving because they had 400 yards offensively. Like they were moving the ball. It's just the thing that we talk about this every year. If you don't have a good defense, can't get stops, get turnovers. And that's what the Cowboys are doing right now. And it is shocking as a Cowboys fan. And I cannot give enough credit to Dan Quinn. I don't know what he's done over there, but he has emphasized clearly just take the ball away because we're not going to stop them. Bend, don't break. Just make a play on the ball because if we can't force 3-and-outs, we're going to have to be opportunistic in the moments that we can create. And that's what they've done so far. I mean, the guys that really stood out to me defensively for the Cowboys in this game, Ron Curse, he's, one of the safeties. He's a backup guy. He looked amazing. He was involved in a lot of plays. He had an interception that got called back because of pass interference. Watching the replay, I didn't think there was pass interference. He did have his hand on Jared Cook, and I don't know the ins and outs of the rule. But he had his hand on his hip, and maybe that's not, you can't do that. But I mean, he played great the whole game. Was just involved in a lot. Targeted 4 times. He allowed 2 catches, but I think for only 8 yards. So fantastic game for Ron Curse. And then Micah freaking Parsons, man, the pick was so worth it. I'm not going to hear this from anybody. He is the best player on the Cowboys defense. I love DeMarcus Lawrence. He's the best player. The first game, he played linebacker most of the time. Great against Tampa Bay. Did have a few rookie errors, but you're a rookie, first game. This game, first game that he's played defensive end since he was in high school. DeMarcus Lawrence obviously got hurt, so he played defensive end a vast majority of this game. He led the NFL this week in pressures against the opposing quarterback. He had a sack. It was a little bit of a wonky one. I don't know if you saw the play at the end there. I'll explain. Did you see the play at the end? It's the one where Herbert got sacked, but he didn't get sacked. I'll just recap it in case anyone didn't see it. They were in the red zone and they were going to. They looked like they were going to try and score here. I think they were down 3 at this point, and they looked like they could potentially score a touchdown. They were on the 5-yard line. 2nd and 5. Herbert gets under pressure. Micah Parsons is in the backfield running after him. Herbert is falling backwards, throws the ball. It's incomplete, but the refs called him before he fully released it as sacked because they were trying to protect him from getting hit. They do this sometimes where like they call the play dead, right? Because they're trying to protect whoever the player is who maybe isn't fully down, but it doesn't look like they're going to get anything. They did that for Herbert, even though he was able to get the ball off and, it would have been incomplete. Because of that, it went from 3rd and 5 to 3rd and 25 because of how far back he was. And that basically, that forced him to settle for a field goal because, on 3rd and 5, you can score a touchdown right there because, it was 3rd and goal from the 5, sorry, to 3rd and goal from the 25. And they weren't able to punch it in. That's a questionable call right there. I don't understand the rule behind it. Personally, I thought it was a dumb call because it seems like let the quarterback try to make the play. But I'll take it as a Cowboys fan. But Micah Parsons, he played amazing. Like I said, 8 pressures, 4 QB hits, had the sack. I think he had 3 tackles for loss. So he's a monster. He's a beast. He's so versatile, worth the pick. Like I said, I think he's the best player in the Cowboys defense, and that's including DeMarcus Lawrence, who I really love. On the other side of the ball, the Cowboys, they couldn't get a whole lot going in the passing game. Dak didn't have an amazing game, but I think this just, once again, I'm giving a lot of credit to the Cowboys coordinators here because last week it was all pass. This week it was all run. They ran the ball 31 times. They got Tony Pollard involved, which I really loved because I'm a big fan of Tony Pollard. He had 100 rushing yards, averaging 8 per carry. Zeke had 70 rushing yards, had a touchdown as well. So I'm loving what the Cowboys coordinators are doing right now. On defense, they're making turnovers. On offense, they're attacking the opposing team with their weak, and it's working. So yeah, Cowboys came out with a win here. I'm not gonna overreact and say that this was such a massive win because at the end of the day, I do feel like the Chargers really shot themselves in the foot. I'm not sure how much of this game you watched. I don't know the exact count, but they had so many penalties against them.
Yeah, I was about to say. I know that drive that you're talking about. There's like 2 plays before that where it was a legal shift on Jared Cook. He got the touchdown, but it was a legal shift, so they called it back, and he also got taunting. So maybe no, once again,
so
that was an issue this week too, but we expected that to be the taunting calls.
Dallas had 8 penalties for 76 yards against them. Chargers had 12 penalties for 99 yards against them. So, I mean, there was penalties on both sides, but clearly the Chargers there had 4 more penalties called against them. And I think theirs were a little more crucial when it came to, ruining some of these drives that they were putting together. Dallas did have some, sucky penalties, like when they roughed the punter. Like that was just a really dumb one. Like anytime you rough the punter, like, come on, guys. But like I said, for the Chargers, I think their penalties were really costly on a lot of their offensive drives. So scrappy game for the Cowboys, but I think both teams have a lot to look forward to because if the Chargers can clean up the penalty stuff, I think they can be a real force. Justin Herbert's looked fantastic. Mike Williams has looked really good. And for the Cowboys, lots to look forward to because they're creating turnovers. And Zach Martin is back. I didn't even mention that. Zach Martin he's absurd, man. He's so good.
All right, so good win for the Cowboys. Now going on to the last game of the afternoon slot, one that almost went almost finished before the Sunday night game started, was the Tennessee Titans beating the Seattle Seahawks 33-30. At one point, it looked like Seattle was just going to run away from this game. Wins at halftime, 24-9. I mean, Tyler Lockett had a 63-yard touchdown. It really looked like Seattle was doing whatever they wanted. But then Tennessee just came back out in the second half, and they just gave it to Derrick Henry. And in typical Tennessee fashion, for lack of a better phrase, they ran Seattle into submission. It just got to the point. I feel like almost every team that plays Tennessee does, where it's just like Derrick Henry again. Oh man. And then you just see him, these 5-6 yard gains, defenders a little bit slower to get to him. Maybe, and I understand maybe they don't want to go into a collision with him. So they don't put 100% effort, breaks the tackle, and he does more. So, but yeah, literally rode him in the second half to victory. And literally right when, I think they scored on the first possession of overtime, if I remember correctly, Tennessee. Because I don't watch once Tennessee won the toss for overtime. Because I was like, okay, Tennessee won the toss. They're going to just, once again, run the ball.
And Tennessee punted, then Seattle punted, and Tennessee scored.
So, yeah. There you go. But, and credit to Tennessee's defense for stepping up in the second half. Because like I mentioned, the first half is Seattle was just gashing them. I mean, like I said, Tyler Lockett, a huge play. And then Tennessee made it 9-17 with 1:05 left. And Russell Wilson was able to lead them on a 75-yard touchdown drive with 17 seconds to spare. So credit Mike Vrabel, who's a defensive mind, getting his defense back on track, and just they pulled it together, won this game, and obviously the offense came through too. And once again, I think this was a game without Taylor Lewan too, which is important to note. So, John, what were your takeaways in regards to this game?
I gotta praise their defense like you just did. For the second half, I think the Seahawks only scored 7 points. Did my camera freeze? Yeah, so they outscored them. They had 3 touchdowns in the second half. They held the Seahawks to only 1 touchdown. Then if you include the overtime, they had the field goal. So they outscored them after halftime, 24-7. I got to give praise to them for that, because this is a Titans defense that you and I have both been skeptical about. They showed up when it mattered in this game, even though they gave up 30 points. And then on the other side for the Titans, it's all hail King Henry, right? I mean, 41 touches is absurd for a running back. Like that, for any player, that's absurd. But he touched the ball 41 times. He dominated. Julio Jones, I think he's getting overshadowed in this game.
He had
6 catches for 128 yards. Yeah, a solid performance
almost
from him.
Almost had a touchdown too. Got called back.
So I mean, he looked good. So yeah, I mean, it was a really exciting game. I think if you're Seattle, you can't get too messed up about this one. But I will say, offensively, and I don't know. I mean, the second half, they just really couldn't get a whole lot going. I was a little bit disappointed in the run game. I mean, Chris Carson, he was averaging 2.4 yards per carry, and I think that just really hurt them, because I think they wanted to run the ball a little bit too much in the second half. But I think you got to adjust. You got to start attacking them, with what's working. And the passing game was working. Tyler Lockett had like 180 yards. DK Metcalf didn't have an amazing game, but still like 6 catches for 50. I think you could potentially get him a little bit more involved too. So I don't know. I think it's just a learning game for Seattle, right? Like you need to adjust. It's the NFL. Sometimes you just got to abandon what's not working and just do what it is, even if it feels predictable.
Yeah. So, but we'll see how these two teams fare. But a huge win for Tennessee, because they were looking like they're about to be in the 0-2 hole. And once again, for the NFC West, Seattle has looked like, once again, they could have been tied with the Rams. Now you're a game behind, because you basically blew
and the Cardinals.
And the Cardinals. The Cardinals are 2-0. So that is the afternoon games. Now going
to the Niners. They're all 2-0.
Yeah. I forget. Kyle mentioned that. That he didn't want them all to be 2-0. So now one of them is 1-1. But going on to the next game here, the Kansas City Chiefs took on the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens, it didn't look good for them at first, but then they came back to win 36-35. Quick takeaways on my end. I mean, Kansas City, really they had control of the game, at least offensively. Not too worried. It was, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a bad fumble, and honestly, he hasn't looked too impressive either. Then on the other side, though, Kansas City's just not sure if they tired out. But it just seemed like Baltimore finally had some answers for what they were doing, and maybe this was also the fact. I know Chris Jones is moving to defensive end. He was in and out a bunch too, a lot more than I expected. I'm not sure if I think I read or heard somewhere that they don't feel comfortable with him on run situations, so he's only there for third down. But it's like it's Chris Jones. Like, why is he? You're paying him big money. Why? And we all know he's great pass rusher, especially on the inside. I don't know what's going on there. So that's something that I think is encouraging for Kansas City. It's like, oh man, like we saw him figured out defensively, but we almost beat this team if it wasn't for a fumble and some heroics from Lamar late in the game. But in regards to the Ravens, good for Lamar. Shook off 2 early interceptions too, and I think one of the biggest criticisms of Lamar Jackson has always been if they're behind by double digits and have to throw, they're not going to win. Well, he did that today. Made some timely throws. Made that one touchdown throw to Hollywood Brown. Very reminiscent of the one against Cleveland last year on Monday night. So good that they have some sort of connection, because remember last year at one point Hollywood Brown expressed publicly through, I think it was Twitter or whatever, wasn't happy. But it's good that they found some rapport there. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how much else to say. Good win for the Ravens, getting this monkey off their back, and maybe this will help them build confidence going forward. I am concerned about their defense. I know this is Kansas City, but another week where their defense, I mean, if it wasn't for Odafe always strip fumble, I mean, that game is iced at that point. So a great play by him, the rookie, and hopefully he can keep getting more play time and be a difference maker for them, because that defense needs it right now, especially with, like we mentioned, Marcus Peters out and that secondary looking weaker. But John, what were your takeaways on this Sunday night game?
I got to give a lot of credit to Baltimore. I think, people, when they talk about this matchup, they bring up Lamar calling Kansas City his kryptonite, and Kansas City and Mahomes are 3-0 against the Ravens. And like you said, there's criticism of when they get behind, they can't throw, and the game plan doesn't work. I got to give credit to Lamar. I got to give credit to John Harbaugh. They stuck to their guns. They didn't change the game plan. They ran the ball when they needed to. They relied on their defense to get them stops, to get them back into the game early and keep it close. And then at that point, it was just, all right, we're going to go out and do our thing and try to put up more points than you. And they did that. I got to give them credit, too, for the ballsy 4th down call. I know it's 4th and 1, and you're one of the best running teams in the league, but it's always a tough call there, because that could give them really good field position to go down and take the game from you. So, the Ravens, they executed. They looked really good. I don't really have much else to say about them. For Kansas City, I feel like I don't get why Chris Jones is on the edge, personally. I think he's just so dominant in the middle. And when you play a team like Baltimore, they put the edge guys in a lot of read options, and Chris Jones has never had to deal with that before. And so I think that's maybe potentially why they weren't comfortable with him on running downs, is because, I mean, Lamar and the run game was making him look silly when he's in these read options, because he's not necessarily athletic enough to be, handling a Lamar Jackson in that kind of a situation. So I feel like if you're not comfortable with him on those sort of situations, just put him back in the middle, and maybe, you alternate him in the middle and the outside if you still need to do that. But I think that he should be on the inside, because he's been the best, defensive tackle in his conference for a really long time. And then he's been the best one in the league besides Aaron Donald for a really long time. So why change it up and not, allow him to do what he's best at, if that means that he can't be on the field for certain plays?
I think it's just, and I think it's just they just trying to get their best 11 on the field. They did sign Jaron Reed, who's a good defensive tackle, probably, but I am with you. Like, still should find ways to put Chris Jones in successful positions.
Yeah,
find someone else, some other edge rusher guy. That's like, I think that's the biggest thing, is that the best point you hit on was that he's probably never been put in that situation since like high school or something. And but even then, he's probably the best, most athletic guy at that time. So it didn't matter if he made the right read, he could still grab the guy or whatever. Now he's in the NFL, and now he's faced, having to make a decision to, he has to make a read, and then if he reads wrong, oh shoot, it's the freaking Lamar Jackson I got to try to wrangle down in the open field, and good luck with that.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like, people think like, oh, it's just defensive line. No, it's totally different. The responsibilities in the run game, totally different on what you need to do against, the tackles. It's just a different beast. And I'm not saying that Chris Jones is not good enough to do it, because he absolutely is. He had a very key sack against the Browns in the first week. I can't, I think he maybe forced a fumble. I can't remember. But he's absolutely good enough to do it. It's just, if he's not on the field every defensive play, I'm concerned, because he is a key difference maker for them. He absolutely needs to be on the field, even against running plays. And if that means you got to take off Jaron Reed and throw somebody else in to play the edge and still keep, move Chris Jones inside, that's what you got to do, because he's your best defensive player in the front seven. So I'm just questioning the coaching calls there on why they would potentially, be taking him off the field if they're not comfortable with him, because he's on the edge, against the run.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes for Kansas City going forward. But like we mentioned, I mean, they lose only by one, and that's because Baltimore went for it, which, once again, smart on Baltimore. Once again, just flex me back to an NFC Championship, not letting the other quarterback get the ball again. So that, just trusting your quarterback, trusting your guy,
Yep.
and it paid dividends. So good win for Baltimore. Really needed too. Once again, if they fell in that 0-2 hole, who knows? They'll be on an uphill climb for the rest of the season, especially with the injuries that they've dealt with. But going on to the last game, Monday nighter, my Packers took care of business, beat up on the Lions 35-17. Though, to be honest, I mean, first half, Lions were looking really good. And I think the key thing was really the rain, because Jared Goff, he lost the ball twice. I think he got the ball back the second time, but the other fumble, Green Bay picked up. And it seemed to knock the offense out of rhythm for Detroit, because otherwise, first half, they were able to, run the ball as effectively as they wanted to, and then they had some key passes. One to Hawkinson for a touchdown. I think the other was to Cephas.
Yep.
But it was good to see the Packers offense at least go, back in action, get Aaron Jones back going. Aaron Rodgers looked really good, threw some lasers, like we mentioned that Herbert tried to do, but he did, the one to, I think it was Tanyan over the middle. That was a scary one. And live time, because you're like, what? And then boom, hit that one. So it's good to see him back in sync. Glad Aaron Jones found the necklace with his dad's ashes in it. So good on him. Good on the groundskeeper for being there till 1:45 a.m. That's commitment. And but regards to the actual game, good for the Packers. Get that bounce back game. Gonna need it, especially going up against San Fran next week. But defensively, I'm still worried about our run defense, because once again, if it wasn't for how the game went, I feel like Detroit could have kept running the ball the way they wanted to. We saw the Saints do it week one. Now we're going to go play San Francisco. Saving grace may be that they may not have the talented running backs to take advantage of that. We'll see. But for the Lions, yeah, it's just tough year, man. Like we mentioned, Quintez Cephas seems to be the best, most reliable receiver, and he seems solid, but he is not a number one receiver in the NFL on a team, and that's no offense to him. Good player. I'm sure he works hard, but that's just the way the ball rolls. And obviously, I couldn't even name any of their corners, and I watched most of that game. So lacking talent, but I think they have a good identity set in place with Dan Campbell, it seems like. But John, what are your takeaways on the Monday nighter?
I thought I was sitting pretty picking the Lions to cover here in the first half. I was like, man, they're going to keep this one close. I expect Green Bay to win, pull away a little bit at the end here. But unfortunately, Green Bay really turned it on behind Aaron Jones. The guy dominated, and Detroit they couldn't do anything to stop it. So they didn't cover. Unfortunate for me, but good win for the Packers. That's sort of bounce back you want to have. When you put up barely any points week one, you come back and you put up 35. I don't care who it's against. That's what you got to do, just to get in the rhythm. Say, okay, like we're still good at offense. We can still score. So good game for them. For the Lions, I think although they lost, it's an encouraging sign. Like, they had a pretty solid game. They looked like they had a good first half game plan. And for the lack of talent they do have, I think there was still just signs of hope. Penei Sewell, sort of like Jamar Chase, struggled in the preseason, has balled out so far in the regular season. Looked really good. He had to deal with Nick Bosa in week one, and now the Packers pass rush in week two. And so he's handled it. He's looked solid. Yeah, I just think the Lions, like I said, they got a lot of young guys. So it's everyone knew it was a building year. And so at least being able to keep up with Green Bay for part of the game is encouraging because that just shows you, okay, we do have some talented pieces here. We can make some things happen. It's just now we got to build upon it.
All right. So that is the week 2 reactions.